I want to tell you something strange today because everyone, your podiatrist, your grandmother, that salesperson at the shoe store, they all say the same thing: buy better shoes, get an insert, and your feet will be fine. And for years I believed that too. But here is the thing that kept bothering me. If shoes were really the whole story, then why do so many active, healthy people still watch their feet slowly collapse inward, still develop bunions, still feel that deep ache along the arch by the end of the day? Something else is going on, and it starts with one single muscle, hidden deep in your leg, that most people have never even heard of. And today I am going to show you exactly what that muscle is, what it does, and how to bring it back before it takes your knees and your hips down with it. Before we get into any of that, if you are someone who spends hours on your feet, someone who has started noticing your shoes wearing down strangely on one side, do me a quick favor and hit follow on Smart Psychology right now, because this channel is built exactly of moments like this, where the body is quietly sending you a message and almost nobody is translating it correctly. And I promise the rest of this will make that message impossible to ignore. So let me start with the myth, because the myth is where everyone gets stuck. And the myth is exactly the reason so many people never find the real answer, no matter how many walks they take, how many pairs of expensive sneakers they buy, how carefully they watch their weight, because when that one small muscle starts quietly failing, your entire foot begins falling apart from the inside, piece by piece, no matter what you do on the outside. We are told that the arch of the foot is basically a bone structure, a fixed little bridge that either you were born with or you were not. Flat feet, high arches. It is genetics, nothing to be done. Just buy an insert and move on with your life. That idea sounds reasonable, and it is almost completely wrong. Your arch is not a solid bridge held up by bone the way a stone archway is held up by stone. Your arch is a living structure, held up by tendons and muscles the way a suspension bridge is held up by cables. And cables, unlike stone, can weaken, they can stretch. They can go slack over time if nothing is pulling them tight. And when the main cable goes slack, the whole bridge begins to sag, slowly, quietly, one small collapse at a time, until one day you look down and your ankle is rolling inward, and your shoes do not sit flat on the floor anymore. The main cable holding up your arch is a muscle called the tibialis posterior. And I know, that name sounds like something out of a medical textbook. Forget the name for a second, focus on the job. This muscle starts deep in your calf, tucked behind your shin bone, runs down behind the bony bump on the inside of your ankle, and then fans out underneath your foot, attaching to the bones right at the peak of your arch. Every single time your foot hits the ground, this muscle is the one contracting to lift and support that arch, to keep your ankle from rolling inward, to keep your entire lower leg stacked correctly on top of your foot. It works in silence thousands of times a day, and because it works in silence, almost nobody thanks it, almost nobody trains it, almost nobody even knows it exists until the day it starts to fail. And here is where the walking myth and the shoe myth both start to fall apart, because modern life has made this muscle almost completely unnecessary. Think about it. Cushioned shoes with built-in arch support do the lifting for you, so the muscle does not have to. Flat, smooth sidewalks do not challenge your ankle the way uneven natural ground once did, so the muscle does not have to stabilize much. Sitting for hours a day means the muscle barely contracts at all. Your body follows the same brutal rule your leg muscles follow: use it or lose it. And a muscle that is constantly being replaced by an insert, a cushioned sole, or a flat sidewalk, slowly forgets how to do its own job. It gets weaker, it gets longer and looser than it should be, and every year it holds a little less of your arch off the ground. Now here is what actually happens when that one muscle stops pulling its weight. And I want you to really picture this because it is not just a foot problem, it becomes a whole body problem. As the tibialis posterior weakens, the arch begins to drop, just slightly at first, barely noticeable. As the arch drops, your ankle bone starts to roll inward with every step, a pattern doctors call overpronation. As your ankle rolls inward, the alignment of your entire leg above it changes too. Your shin rotates inward, your knee gets pulled slightly out of its natural tracking line, and your knee, remember, was never designed to twist like that thousands of times a day. From there, the hip on that side has to compensate, tilting and rotating to keep you balanced. And from the hip, the compensation climbs straight up into your lower back. This is why so many people chase knee pain and back pain for years, trying every stretch and every pill, never realizing the actual source of the problem is sitting quietly in one small muscle in their calf that gave up years earlier. Meanwhile, down at the foot itself, the damage keeps compounding. With the arch no longer properly supported, the plantar fascia, that thick band of tissue running along the bottom of your foot, gets stretched further than it should with every step, which is a major reason so many people develop stabbing heel pain first thing in the morning. The big toe joint starts to take on abnormal pressure from the inward rolling motion, which over years contributes to that painful bony bump forming at the base of the big toe, the one most people just call a bunion and blame entirely on shoes. And the deep stabilizing muscles inside the foot itself, tiny ones most people never think about, start to weaken right alongside the tibialis posterior, because the whole system was built to work as a team, and when the captain of that team stops showing up, the rest of the team falls apart with it. In more advanced cases, doctors even give this collapse a formal name, adult acquired flat foot, and it almost always traces back to this exact story, one tendon, worn down over years of quiet neglect, finally losing the tug of war against gravity. And here is the part that surprises most people. This entire chain reaction can happen without a single dramatic injury. No twisted ankle, no fall down the stairs, no obvious moment you could point to and say that is when it started. It happens the way rust happens, invisibly, gradually, 1,000 small steps at a time, until one day the damage finally becomes loud enough to notice. Doctors sometimes describe this in stages, and I think understanding the stages helps take away some of the fear, because you can catch yourself at any point along the way. In the earliest stage, the tendon is simply inflamed and a little weak, but the foot shape still looks normal. This is where Denise was standing without realizing it. In the middle stage, the arch visibly begins to flatten, and you start being able to see the change when you look down at your own foot from above. In the later stage, the foot can become rigid in its new, collapsed position, and the ankle joint itself starts to take on damage from years of abnormal angling. The entire point of catching this early, the entire reason I am spending this much time explaining the mechanisms instead of just handing you a list of exercises, is that stage 1 is almost completely reversible, with consistent strengthening, while stage 3 often requires bracing, or even surgery. The muscle is telling you a story long before the mirror does, you just have to know how to listen. I want to tell you about someone, I will call her Denise, because her story is honestly the story of half the people watching this right now. Denise was 44, a school teacher, on her feet 6-7 hours a day, every single day, for over a decade. She wore what she thought were good shoes, supportive sneakers, the kind with the thick cushioned sole everyone recommends. For years she was fine, or at least she thought she was fine. Then one spring she noticed her favorite shoes were wearing down strangely on the inside edge, and she brushed it off. A few months later, she noticed a dull ache along the inside of her ankle by the end of the school day, and she brushed that off too, figured it was just standing too much, figured rest would fix it. Then one evening, stepping off a curb, her ankle rolled in a way it never used to, no injury, no twist, it just gave, and she nearly fell. That was the moment Denise finally went to a specialist, and the diagnosis was exactly what you would expect by now, a weakened, overstretched tibialis posterior. An arch that had been quietly collapsing for years while she blamed everything except the actual cause. The good news, and this is the part I really want you to hold on to, is that with a targeted strengthening routine, the kind I am about to walk you through, Denise rebuilt that muscle over several months, her ankle stopped rolling, the ache disappeared, and she still teaches on her feet all day, except now her foundation actually holds her up the way it is supposed to. If any part of Denise's story sounds a little too familiar, if you have noticed your own shoes wearing unevenly or that quiet ache creeping in by the end of the day, go ahead and drop a comment telling me where you feel it most, because I read every single one, and it genuinely helps me know what to cover next here on Smart Psychology. So let us get practical, because knowing the problem without knowing the fix does not help anyone. First, you want to actually test yourself, so here is a simple way to check. Stand barefoot and slowly rise up onto the toes of one foot at a time, watching your heel as it lifts. If your heel tilts noticeably inward as you rise, or if you simply cannot balance and lift smoothly on one side, that is a strong sign your tibialis posterior on that side has gotten weak. Another quick check. Look at the wear pattern on the inside edge of your everyday shoes. Heavy inward wear is often a quiet signal that this muscle has been losing the fight for a long time. Now for the actual training, and I want to walk you through this the way I would if I were standing right there with you. The first exercise is called the short foot exercise, and it sounds almost too simple to matter, but it directly targets the muscles that support your arch from underneath. Stand or sit with your foot flat on the floor, and without curling your toes, try to gently drag the ball of your foot back toward your heel, shortening the foot and lifting the arch slightly, like you are doming the middle of your foot upward. Hold that lift for 5 seconds, relax, and repeat 10 times per foot. It feels strange at first, almost nothing seems to happen. That is completely normal. The muscles involved are small and have been asleep for a long time. Second, towel scrunches. Sit in a chair with a towel laid flat on the floor under one bare foot, and using only your toes, scrunch the towel toward you, then push it back out. Repeat this for 2 full minutes per foot. This wakes up the intrinsic muscles that work as a team with the tibialis posterior to hold your arch stable. Third, and this one is the most important, resisted inversion. If you have a resistance band, loop it around something sturdy, sit with your leg out in front of you, and hook the band around the inside of your foot near your toes. Slowly turn your foot inward against the resistance, then return. 10 to 15 slow controlled reps per foot, 2 to 3 sets. This movement directly loads the tibialis posterior, the exact muscle we have been talking about this whole time, and if you do not have a band, simply pressing your foot inward against your own hand, applying steady resistance, works almost as well when you are just starting out. Fourth, single leg calf raises, standing on one foot, rising slowly up onto your toes and lowering back down, 10 to 12 reps per side, holding a wall for balance if you need it. This strengthens the entire calf and ankle complex that supports the tibialis posterior from above. And fifth, simply practice standing on one leg for 30 to 60 seconds at a time, several times a day, while brushing your teeth, while waiting for coffee to brew, anywhere you have a spare moment. This retrains the stabilizing reflex your foot and ankle are supposed to have, the exact reflex that fades quietly when your shoes and your sidewalk keep doing all of the balancing work for you instead of asking your own body to do it. A few coaching notes before you start, because small details make a real difference here. Do all of this barefoot whenever possible. Socks and shoes soften the feedback your foot is trying to give you, and feedback is exactly what this weak, quiet muscle needs right now. Go slower than feels necessary. The temptation with all 5 of these simple movements is always to rush through the reps, but the tibialis posterior responds best to controlled, deliberate tension, not speed. If your foot cramps a little in the first week or 2, that is completely normal. It simply means those muscles have been asleep for a long time and are suddenly being asked to work again. Ease off slightly and keep going rather than stopping altogether. And if you have significant existing foot pain, a known tear, or a recent injury, talk to a podiatrist or physical therapist before starting anything new. I am not your doctor, and this routine is meant for the vast majority of people dealing with ordinary, gradual weakening, not acute injuries. Do these 5 things together, 2 to 3 times a week, roughly 10 minutes total, and here is something worth understanding a little deeper before we finish, because it is not just about strength. Your foot contains around 200,000 nerve endings, more concentrated sensory input than almost any other part of your body relative to its size, which is why some researchers actually refer to the foot as a second brain for balance. Every time you strengthen and properly load that arch, you are not just tightening a tendon, you are waking up a communication line between your foot and your brain that tells your whole nervous system exactly where the ground is and how to respond to it instantly. This is the same communication line that keeps older adults from falling. The same one that lets a toddler learn to walk on uneven grass without thinking about it, and it is the same one that slowly goes quiet in anyone who spends decades in cushioned shoes on flat, predictable ground. Think about how much your foot is actually doing without you ever noticing. Adjusting to a slightly tilted walk, sensing a small stone under the ball of your foot and shifting weight away from it in a fraction of a second, catching a wobble on uneven grass before you even consciously register that the ground changed. All of that happens through the same nerve pathways that run through the tibialis posterior and the small stabilizing muscles around it, and every single one of those pathways gets stronger and faster the more you actually ask your foot to work. This is a big part of why falls become so dangerous later in life. It is rarely that someone simply lost their strength overnight. It is that this constant, silent conversation between the ground and the brain slowly faded out over years of flat shoes and flat sidewalks, until the body simply could not react fast enough anymore when something unexpected happened: a curb, a rug, a wet tile floor. Rebuilding this muscle is not just about how your foot looks or whether a bunion forms. It is about keeping that entire alarm system online for as long as possible. And that alarm system responds to real training at almost any age, which is genuinely one of the more hopeful facts in all of this. I also want to be honest with you about timelines, because nobody fixes a tendon that took 10 or 15 years to weaken in a single week. In the first 2 to 3 weeks, you will mostly notice better awareness. Your foot simply feels more alive, more responsive. By 6 to 8 weeks, most people notice their ankle rolling in less during normal walking, and that end-of-day ache along the arch starting to fade. By 3 months, real structural change is happening. The muscle is measurably stronger. The arch is holding its shape better under load. And if you stay consistent for 6 months to a year, this is often enough to meaningfully slow or even reverse the kind of arch collapse doctors used to tell people was simply permanent and unfixable. Your foundation, just like the rest of your body, is still listening, still capable of rebuilding, no matter how many years of neglect came before today. I have talked to people in their 60s and 70s who assumed their collapsing arches were simply a permanent part of getting older, something to manage with inserts for the rest of their life, and who were genuinely surprised to feel real, measurable change after a few consistent months of this kind of targeted work, because the muscle itself never actually forgot how to do its job. It was simply waiting for someone to finally ask it to. I know it is tempting to hear all of this and think it only matters for people already in pain, but that is exactly backwards. The people who benefit most are the ones who start before the collapse ever becomes visible, before the bunion forms, before the knee starts aching, before a simple curb becomes a real risk of falling. Prevention is quiet and unglamorous. Nobody films a highlight reel of an arch that simply never collapsed in the first place, but that quiet, invisible outcome is genuinely the best possible result you could ever ask for. The version of this story where nothing dramatic ever has to happen at all, because the foundation simply, quietly held. Your feet carry every single step you will ever take for the rest of your life, and the muscle we talked about today is not some minor detail. It is the quiet keystone holding that entire structure together. So tonight, take your shoes off, do the short foot exercise for just 2 minutes. Feel how strange and unfamiliar that small lift under your arch feels. And understand that strangeness is simply the sound of a muscle waking back up after years of being carried by cushioning instead of carrying you. If this changed the way you think about your own feet, even a little, subscribe to Smart Psychology so you do not miss the next one. Share it with someone whose knees or back you have heard them complain about. Because the real cause might be sitting quietly in their calf and their ankle, exactly where nobody thought to look. Take care of your feet. They have been holding you up this whole time, and they deserve a little more attention than a better pair of shoes, a little more patience, and just those few quiet minutes tonight, standing barefoot on your own floor, finally listening to what they have been trying to tell you for years, before the story ever has the chance to become a hard one.